I want to come talk to you today about a subject that I've kept to myself for quite a long time really, and I was talking to some clients the other day about it, and I thought, let's just not keep it to my clients, let's just push it out to everybody, because I think it's a really, really important subject. Words. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a backstory behind this. My job, previous to what I do now, was a prison officer. I was working in the prison service. I spent 3 years walking on the landings, and that really boosted my confidence up. I was in charge of the landings, I had certain roles to do, managing people, and literally as I was working through the jobs I was doing, I was getting a lot more confidence in myself. Then I started the job as a PTI. If you don't know, a PTI is a physical training instructor. I was working in the gymnasium part of the prison service, because PT or physical training or fitness or health, whatever you want to call it, is in my blood, and that is final. I don't think it will ever leave. I've always got to do something around there, and working on the landings and locking prisoners away, feeding them, doing the mail, and all the day-to-day running of a wing, it got a bit tedious, and I was getting that drawing sensation from the gym for me to go back to do some fitness. So I got the job as a PTI, went away, spent 16 weeks up at Liverpool National Sports Centre studying all the different sports, from basketball to hockey to football to volleyball. The list was endless. It was so many sports that we had to learn, and literally as you're going through the course, you're delivering subjects, you're becoming a teacher, you're talking to people, you're doing loads and loads of different skills, and you're learning loads of new skills. So as you can imagine, my confidence was just growing and growing and growing and growing. And then I started my role, and I loved it. I loved working with the prisoners, I loved the people I was working with, but I didn't realise that I had dyslexia. Okay, I knew I struggled with my reading and my spelling, but it didn't bother me. I got by, I just sort of persevered, until one day, one person started picking holes in my spelling. They'd be looking over my shoulder when I'd be writing an email. "You're not sending that, are you? Can't you spell that? What's that you've written there?" And I never really paid attention to it until then. Until somebody picked up on what they called was my faults. And it started off with one person. And you know what it's like when you're in a small team, that one person turned into two people. And started off with just picking holes in my spelling, which, yeah, I can handle that. But it didn't stop there. It led on from that. First of all, my spelling. Then they started putting names to me for it. They started calling me Village. Obviously, the village idiot. Because I couldn't spell. I could spell, but some of the words I would probably leave out, or I would miss a word, some letters off the end of the word, or some bits out of the middle. I knew what they meant to say, but they thought it was a good idea to pick holes in this. And literally, for the first few months of this, I was like, yeah, it's just banter. It's just the boys being the boys, because it was a male team we was in there. I think it was about 5 or 6 of us in the team. But then they started talking about me behind my back, and I'd walk into the office and they'd all start laughing. Yes, they're having a joke about me, but it was at that point that I started taking it on board. I started taking ownership of what they were saying to me and how it made me feel. So it started building, and it started building, and I tried to keep it under control, just ignore them, just laugh along with them and so forth. But there's only so much you can take. There's only so much sort of pressure I could deal with. Because then they started talking to my face, calling me the village idiot. And then the prisoners, which was the worst thing ever, the prisoners started picking up on that, and they started calling me it. So I had my colleagues saying it one side, and I was trying to discipline and tell the prisoners not to do this because it's not right, blah, blah, blah. And I had a massive conflict then. So it really, really pissed me off. It got to the point where I was in an exam, a group exam, where I had to give out this lecture, and they started in this exam as well. I'm glad you're here, Baz. It rings in my ears now. The words they said. I'm glad you're here with us, Baz, because you make us look intelligent. And that stuck with me. At that point, I got up, I threw my keys down the chute, and I walked out of the job. Here talking to you, I look back on this and I thank them guys, because they might have just been doing it as a banter, having a laugh, you know, staff morale and all this business, but it's me. I was the person that took meaning to them words. I was the person that took ownership of what they were saying. It was me that put meaning to it and made myself feel that way. So at the time, it was tough, it was hard, but they've given me the biggest lesson that I could ever have from working in that prison service. Massive, massive lesson. Nothing has any meaning except the meaning I give to it. Let me say that again. Nothing has any meaning except the meaning I give to it. They are so powerful. And I can understand, I can sympathise, I can empathise with anybody who's been through that kind of, call it what you like, bullying, teasing, banter. You put that name to it, you create the feeling that goes behind it. And understanding that, I thank them for it. I really do. I thank them for it, because looking back on my career, I know for a fact I was a good PTI. Looking back on my career, I know I was a good lecturer. I taught the prisoners, I got respect from the prisoners. It was just a shame that I had to go through that at that time, because it was hard, it was painful. But you have to keep going, and you have to understand what is the meaning I'm putting to it. So how many of you guys, itchy leg, so how many of you guys have actually experienced this? Maybe you're overweight, and you're walking down the street and somebody calls you a name, or you've got a certain colour hair, somebody shouts out a name to you, and you take that on board. Those people that are shouting that out to you, or calling you names, or saying negative things towards you, is only a reflection of themselves. Let me say it again, it's only a reflection of themselves. That's why they're saying it. And for us to take ownership of that is just wrong. We shouldn't be taking ownership, because it's not our behaviour. It's not a reflection on who you are, it's a reflection on who they are. And that is really, really important for us to understand that what they do is a representation of who they are, not who we are. All these little small things that they say about us makes us special, makes us who we actually are. Yes, I've got difficulties in learning, I have trouble spelling most times, I get my words muddled up, but who gives a shit? That's what makes me me. That's why people like me, and I'm not going to change so these people can actually like me, because do I really want someone who calls me names and puts me down to like me, when I've got loads of people who like me for who I am? So if you are that person that somebody has called a name to, drove past and shouted out the window of their car, or whatever it is, I'm sure we've all had that situation happen to us at one point or another. Let me tell you now, but it's got nothing to do with you. It has no reflection on it unless you take ownership of it and you hold on to that and take meaning for it. Because realistically, it's just them. That person over there is depicting who they really are by shouting these horrible things out. Got a burp. Excuse me. And as soon as we understand that, as soon as we can separate what they say and how we accept it into our lives, as soon as we can dismiss it and say, right, you keep that, I don't want that, I'm not accepting it into my life, that's where we get freedom. That's where we get release from all the pain and the anguish about feeling the way we feel. Because if somebody says it to you once, yeah, it's somebody saying I can deal with that. But as soon as somebody says it once, twice, 3 times, and then on maybe the 4th time of saying it, you take ownership of it. And as soon as you take ownership of that, it becomes real. Only when you take ownership of it. It's like there's a Buddhist story, and let me tell you it. Buddha is a monk, or is whatever you want to call him, but he's this person who doesn't get fazed by anything. And this person said, I'm going to challenge that. And he met up with Buddha, and he gave Buddha so much abuse, verbal abuse. He just just let rip at him. And Buddha just sat there and listened. And he goes, well, let me ask you a question. If you give me a present and I choose not to accept it, who owns that present now? And the bloke went, well, I do. And he said, thank you very much. And the bloke twigged. All that abuse he was giving to him were like presents. But Buddha said, no, I do not want to accept this. I'm not accepting these gifts or the language he was giving to him. So he didn't accept it. It wasn't his to own. It stayed with that person. And that's so important. We need to understand that everything we do in our lives, we choose to accept it or we choose to repel it. And these people who give you abuse, say horrible things to you, choose no. Say no, I'm not accepting it, and get on with your life. Be more focused about what you're doing then. Don't accept them, because that's just a reflection on who they are. The first time I've spoke about this since out to the public, since I left the prison service, and I spoke about it with Loz. And it's about time that we speak about this and get you guys, get everyone else to understand that we make the decisions. We let things in or we repel them. We choose how we want to feel. We don't want those type of people restricting our lives and stopping us from doing what we're doing, creating fear because somebody might say something bad about us. Let's not accept that. Let's live life free from all this and not accept it in. Now go and live life fully. Don't accept it.